Introducing, in this corner, Spineripper Johnson. Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So today we're going to be going over the Spineripper Poignard. I don't know how to pronounce that word. You know what? Let's look it up because you guys always like to make fun of my pronunciations of things, and let's see what Google says the pronunciation is for Poignard. I think it's funny to look up Google's pronunciation because sometimes Google's wrong too. All right, here we go. You ready? You ready, guys?
Poignard.
Poignard?
Poignard.
Poignard? Really?
Poignard.
We're just ignoring the G?
Poignard.
We're just ignoring the G then. Okay. I guess we're just ignoring the G. It kind of sounds like he's saying porn. Like, literally, it's like P-O-I-N, and he's not saying the G. So it just sounds like he's saying Poignard. Poignard. I'm not saying Poignard. I'm going to say Poignard. I like that better. All right, so right off the bat, you'll see it has not very good damage at 35 to 88. But 35 to 88 is halfway decent for level 32 when you can actually put this dagger on and use it. It does have a really low strength requirement of 25 and no dexterity requirement at all, but it has extremely low durability, which is a pretty big downside of this, especially as a poison dagger necro, because you're going to be stabbing some people, and you don't want your dagger to be breaking while you're stabbing some people. It's kind of important. It has some really nice effects though. It's a very fast weapon, obviously, because that's a dagger. That's a very fast base. And then it also has +1 to Necromancer skills, which is always going to come in handy on a necro. If you didn't have anything better by this point, just the +1 necro all by itself could potentially be useful. We also have 15% increased attack speed on here, which is definitely going to be nice to make it even faster, although attacking faster with Poison Dagger isn't necessarily what you want because it does a lot of damage over a pretty long period of time. So you kind of just want to stab and run away. You don't want to stab and run away. Like, I mean, you definitely want to hit the target, but once you hit the target, you don't want to just stay in there and keep stabbing. Like, it doesn't do any good to apply your poison dagger multiple times to the same target. Although theoretically you could apply poison dagger to multiple targets, quickly with a faster weapon. We also have a 240% enhanced damage on here, which does vary by 40%, so it's 200 to 240. And then we have adds 15 to 27 damage on here, which is going to be a nice little bump on top of the ED. And then it also has ITD, and it's pretty obvious why they put ignores target's defense on here, because it's a Necromancer. He's not going to have stacked decks. He's not going to be running AR charms and equipment that gives him large amounts of attack rating and attack rating rings and all that other stuff. So giving him ignore target's defense is just kind of a no-brainer, because if you want him to utilize this actually as a melee weapon, you're definitely going to want to put it in a form that he can actually use. We also have 8% lifesteal on here to help keep you alive while you're stabbing some folks, and prevent monster heal, which is definitely going to help out a ton, because prevent monster heal prevents the monsters from regenerating for 20 whole minutes, which is pretty massive. So when you stab them with the dagger, they won't regenerate. And I've gone over this before because a lot of people don't understand how poison works. So poison will prevent regeneration, but only when the monster is green. So if you stab a monster with poison dagger, for instance, and they turn green, then yes, their regeneration is halted. However, if you stab a monster with poison dagger and they turn green for half a second and then they turn green, they turn back to white, or their regular color basically, the regeneration was only halted while the monster was green, even if the poison is still ticking. This is known as 25 frame healing 25 frame healing frames. All right, so each frame in a 25 frame segment, which is basically 1 second, has to be fully consumed by the poison to prevent regeneration. Each individual frame is an opportunity for the monster to regenerate. If all 25 frames are consumed by poison, then the monster stops regenerating completely. However, if the monster's has any of those 25 frames inside of the 1 second that is not consumed by poison, the monster turns white, and then the monster can in fact regenerate during that time period because all of the frames have not been consumed by poison. So having Prevent Monster Heal on the dagger along with the poison is actually pretty great because in any situation where they could potentially regenerate, the Prevent Monster Heal will prevent that entirely, which is great. It also has plus 10 dexterity, which of course will come in handy to help hit bosses and things like that. It's definitely very nice. And I mean, dexterity in general on any kind of character that you're meleeing with, and it'll also help your block chance. So I mean, it's not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. It also comes in an ethereal form, which is 45 to 118 damage, only a 15 strength requirement, and still level 32. Unfortunately, you can't really use this because of the extremely low durability of only 16. It'll break super duper fast. So what does that mean? That means that if you actually want to use the Spineripper, you're going to have to put a Zod rune in it. And putting a Zod rune in the Spineripper is going to increase the level requirement of the Spineripper immensely. You're going to go from level 32 to level 69 relatively quickly. So it's going to turn this from a early, like nightmare, like end normal item, early game item to more of an end game level item, which means that you're probably never going to utilize this unless it's in its upgraded form. Speaking of upgrading, let's go ahead and upgrade it, shall we? So first, let's do the non-ethereal version. You're going to need a Pull rune, a Lum rune, and a Perfect Emerald. And this is going to take us from 35 to 88, 25 strength, level 32, to the Spineripper Bone Knife, 93 to 193, 75 dex requirement, 38 strength, and level 50. Level 50 is actually really low for an elite item. I think that's actually pretty sweet. And the dex and the strength requirement are actually not that bad. In fact, if I just plink 5 points into dexterity right now, I would have enough to put on the non-ethereal version. And 193 is pretty decent damage for level 50. I'm actually digging that quite a bit. I think if you were a Necromancer around level 50 who was utilizing Poison Dagger, this would definitely be a very solid Poison Dagger choice from level 32 all the way up to level 50, and maybe even a little bit further until you maybe get your Death's Web or your Plague Dagger or something like that. It's certainly a very, very nice little dagger. The ethereal version, however, I'm sure is going to upgrade even better. So let's check this out. So we need the Pull, the Lum, and the Perfect Diamond, or Perfect Emerald. And this is going to go from 45 to 118, 15 strength requirement, level 69, to 130 to 275, 65 dexterity, 28 strength, level 76. You notice that when you put a Zod rune in an item, the level requirement does not stay the same. It's a very interesting thing that I've noticed about Zod runes and items is that the level requirement of the Zod rune seems to be almost dependent on the item itself. There's no reason, for instance, if it was a static level, that the level should have increased, but because it is the Zod rune seems to almost specifically have its own level requirement independent of the level requirement of the actual Zod rune. If you were to take a look at a Zod rune, Zod runes have a level requirement of 69. So why is this particular item level 76 when also the Spineripper is level 50? If we were to take this Zod rune and put it into the regular Spineripper, notice it still goes to level 76. So it increases further than the actual rune level, and it's one of the unique things about a Zod rune that I've always found kind of weird. Now, quite honestly, that dagger is pretty sick. 130 to 275 is some really nice damage output. If we were to compare that to the Fleshripper Fang Knife, it's 88 to 340. And I think the only reason that these two knives would even ever be compared together is literally for a Necromancer. So you're looking at a pretty nice bottom end on the Spineripper versus a very nice top end on the Fleshripper. So, both of them are ripping things, and both of them seem to do a pretty good job at ripping things. I would imagine that the Spine Ripper would work pretty well until you manage to get yourself a Flesh Ripper or maybe a Plague Knife. I just don't really see like using the Spine Ripper as like my end game piece of equipment. Not because it's not good, don't get me wrong, because it is actually a pretty sweet knife. There's just so many better options out there. Like the new Plague Rune word is just really awesome for a Poison Dagger Necro, and it kind of just is like a no-brainer for Poison Dagger Necros. Also, the Black Bog's Sharp, which is also an interesting choice, has a lot of plus to skills, and that one can also be very good, especially if you're leaning more heavily toward the Poison Nova. And then even the Flesh Ripper Fang Knife here is also a very interesting choice with all of the negative effects. The Crushing Blow, the Deadly Strike, the Open Wounds, the Prevent Monster Heal, the slows target by are all very interesting effects. And not only that, but it also has negative 50% targets defense, which kind of is better, in my opinion, than ignores targets defense, because ignores targets defense does not work on bosses, whereas negative 50% targets defense does work on bosses. So if you're trying to stab a boss with a poison dagger, the Flesh Ripper Fang Knife is kind of the better choice between the two. All in all, though, I think it's a pretty neat little dagger, and it definitely has a nice second-tier upgrade. Let's take a look over at Silo's Pen real quick, and let's see what kind of monsters we need to kill to farm this item. Alright, the Spine Ripper. The Spine Ripper, ripping out spines all day long. Gotta rip out spines. I don't know what we do with all these spines, but we be ripping out every single spine inside. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So Spine Ripper is a relatively low-level item. It's level 35, so we're going to assume 150% magic find. I feel like that's generous for level 35. And then we're going to sort by bosses first. Let's do the bosses. Ignoring the quest flags. It looks like Bale in normal seems to be the absolute best probability at 1 in 455, 1 in 454. Nightmare and Dariel is pretty good too at 1 in 483. Nightmare and Dariel is probably going to be easier to farm than normal Bale. Just simply because you got to go through all the waves. Although it could be an interesting choice to just simply farm normal Bale for EXP. If you're level 35, Bale's going to give you pretty good EXP at that level. And might be a good choice until you finally hit the right level to go to Nightmare and then farm Nightmare Andy. But normal Diablo is also a good choice here at 1 in 576. And quite honestly, a superior choice to Bale. And a superior choice to Nightmare Andy, especially if you were level 35, because Nightmare is going to introduce you to all of those negative resistances. And normal Diablo is generally very easy to kill. And he's very easy to farm. You know exactly where he is. You could definitely get some pretty good EXP from him. And yeah, I feel like you could do that probably easier than you would Bale or Nightmare Andy, just simply because he's just so easy to get to. Obviously, you always know where he is. You pop the seals. You kill Diablo. You rinse, repeat. Let's take a look at the super uniques. So Nightmare Cow King, 1 in 893. Not really a good one to farm for a level 35 character, but it could be interesting if you had somebody helping you out. Neelathak is 1 in 3,576, so that's pretty terrible. In fact, it looks like a lot of these guys are pretty terrible. Normal Pindleskin is 1 in 5,355. I guess you could farm him repeatedly. That wouldn't be a terrible option. Thresh Socket also apparently can drop this. We also have some interesting options here in Nightmare. Treehead Woodfist, Rakanishu, Bone Ash, even the Countess. These are all relatively... Oh, that's Hell Countess. Never mind. These are all relatively interesting options for like early Nightmare farming. So like if you were just gotten to Nightmare, you could relatively easily farm Rakanishu and Treehead Woodfist. as well as Bonebreaker in the Crypt and Bone Ash in the Cathedral. These are all Act 1 Nightmare monsters, and they're all really easy to get to, so you could definitely farm those with no problem. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when I'm ripping out spines, and keep watching.